lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and today with me I have writer Tim Sheridan. New to me, I discovered you pretty much just within the last month, right? From your Future State book. So already fan of your work, man. So I wanted to get you on here, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, I love this podcast.
Thank you.
I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like you guys are like me, like you get excited about stuff, you're enthusiastic about it. There's so many people out there who are just ready to just, tear everything down because, for whatever reason, it's not what they would do or what have you. But, I appreciate people with enthusiasm for comics. I'm the guy who, when the Star Wars prequels were coming out and everybody was complaining about them, I was like, okay, but I'm just happy they're making more.
I get what you're saying. I'm the same way. Like, I think I liked them when I was younger, and then I got older, and I'm like, I see the problems with them now. But again, like, do I want no Star Wars, or do I want semi-good Star Wars?
Yeah. And I mean, at the very least, you have stuff adding to the lore and the canon, whether you like the execution of stuff or not. I mean, goes for everything. We're not just talking about Star Wars, but anyway. So thank you for having me. I'm new to you. I'm new to everybody in comics. I come out of the world of TV and animation and movies, and but I've been a DC, specifically a DC comic book reader and fan my whole life.
Nice.
And so this was, the kind of thing when the opportunity presented itself, I dove in.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the thing, I was very skeptical about Future State. I'll be honest with you, right? Because I would consider myself a diehard DC fan. I started with DC. That was my first comic book I ever got. And then I didn't really like some of the directions some of the books were going. I was feeling kind of like it was stale. And then Future State happened, and I'm like, oh my God, please don't let this be the convergence event that happened a few years ago when DC made the move from New York to California, because I thought that was going to be cool. And while there was some cool stuff, I felt like it was really just filler. But I think once week one hit, then we had week two. Like, I mean, if you listen to Dylan and I was like, oh, wow, this is way better than I thought. It's cool to have fresh voices at DC. Not to say that I don't like Scott Snyder or Bendis or, Jeff Johns, who kind of were shepherding it for a long time. But it's cool to get new takes, right? Like, I'm seeing unique stuff in it, and it's making me excited for stuff going forward in March. And your stuff, especially, I really liked. We'll get into it. But yeah, I think you can hear the enthusiasm in Dylan and I's voice, because like we met my sophomore year, his junior year in high school, and we've been friends ever since. So like the friendship and the banter between us, like people tell us, like, you're easy to listen to because like you can hear your friendship, and the flow is very easy. And I think that just goes to, so we spent basically every class with headphones and listening to hip hop, talking about comic books. We weren't really doing work. So
I remember those days. Yeah. I mean, the best, what's great about that is there are I'm new here, but there's a couple of guys, a couple of people, I should say, who I knew before, and other writers that I knew, who came in at the same time that I did at DC and on Future State and on some other stuff. And we have, that kind of camaraderie that you're describing as well. I mean, one of my closest colleagues is a guy named Jeremy Adams, who you saw his Black Racer story in Future State and his Black Adam story as well. And he came in around the same time, a little bit after I came in, and you just you got to have people like that who call you out.
Yeah.
Jeremy, thank goodness for him, he read Shazam, Future State Shazam #1 when I got the first proof back. And, I said, just tell me what's working and what's not working. And it was so great to get a perspective from someone that I trusted, who said, yeah, I don't think this is working. maybe clarify this a little bit. I'm somebody who loves mystery boxing, and I love setting up a lot of questions. And that's the stuff that fueled me as a reader. as a kid, and still fuels me. I love big questions, and not just questions about the plot, but questions about character, questions about what does it mean now that Gar and Vic, are the same person? What does that
Yeah.
mean for them? I just love asking those questions and then trying together to sort of figure out the answers. But sometimes to a fault. Sometimes, I'll present a lot of questions, and then, somebody like Jeremy or Mike Cotton, my editor, will say, all right, we're gonna rein you in a little bit. Let's just give an answer to this.
Yeah. Well, like you said too, like you started in animation, right? But you said you've been a comic book fan for as long as like you can remember, right? So I was wondering if you could kind of share like how you started your love of comic books, and then you got into animation, and then like now switching, right? Because I know writing a comic book is a lot different than being in like a writer's room. So I was wondering if you could take us through that.
Yeah. So first of all, my origin story. So I got my very first comics that I ever read were in a trade paperback that my older brother's best friend handed down to me. It was Son of Origins of Marvel Comics, and I read. I tore that thing, apart, reading it over and over and over again. What's funny is that I didn't end up gravitating to Marvel Comics as a kid. I mean, I watched the Marvel animation as a kid. I didn't pick up the comics as much as I picked up DC. Batman was my way in. I was crazy about Batman, and I came in around the time. I mean, now I'm going to show my age here, but I came in around the time that Jason Todd died, and the Dark Knight Returns was happening, and it was like right when the Tim Burton movie was about to happen, and Marv Wolfman did a Batman Year 3 story that is just like, for me, it's everything I want from comics, which isn't what everybody wants, but I am crazy about aftermath, consequences that stem from big events like the death of Jason Todd, which drove Bruce to a really dark place, dark even for him.
Right.
And then and having Grayson come back and try to talk some sense into him, and stuff like that. I got it as a kid. I just got it. You see behind me, I got a poster for, maybe my favorite movie of all time, Transformers the movie, which came out when I was a kid, and I was a big fan of Transformers. But I watched that movie, and the first act of the movie, all these people, all these characters that I loved are dying, and the bad guys are winning. And it was a huge moment for me. I remember sitting in the theater going, how is this possible? And it just sparked so much in me to think the possibilities of what storytelling can do. I mean, ultimately, there is a happy ending in that movie, but there's a cost.
Right.
And that, a lot of people dismiss that movie. Oh, it was just a way to sell more toys. Okay, so they sold more toys, but they told a ripping good story, and with big aftermath, a huge aftermath that they carried into the series. So that really shaped me. And then the first, you also behind me see that Reign of the Supermen poster from my original stuff from when I was a kid. But I picked up Reign of the Supermen. I didn't pick up Death of Superman when I was a kid, because to me, I don't know, I wasn't reading Superman, and it didn't spark for me the way that Reign of the Supermen did. Reign of the Supermen was all about those consequences and the aftermath and big questions. Who is Superman? Is he really there? What's going to happen? And that was my entry point into that. I then ended up years later getting to adapt that story for the animated film. And that was, they asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, you're joking, right?
Yeah.
That was my way in to Superman, as Reign of the Supermen. So, I learned a lot on that. That was an early job for me too in animation. And I learned a lot about the process. I went in thinking I'm going to do a straight adaptation of the book. And, was quickly the producers and the other team members were just like, yeah, that's cute, but this is a movie and that's a comic book. And we have to, do things a little bit differently to make a good movie. And so this is getting to answer your other question about sort of the difference between writing for animation and writing for comics. I mean, I didn't know what was in store when I came in to DC. I did not know how to write a comic book. Some people will read Future State, Shazam, and Teen Titans, Shazam being the first thing that I wrote when I came in, and they will tell you, yeah, it's obvious he doesn't know how to write a comic book. But I was excited about the challenge of learning. I mean, I know storytelling, but I was excited about the challenge, and visual storytelling, I should say. But I was excited about the challenge of figuring out how to do this style. I did not appreciate how different it is to write in graphic format. I didn't come in with any sort of arrogance thinking I could do it better or anything like that. Not at all. I came in like I come into everything, like a sponge, and say, please teach me. What do I need to know? My editor, Mike Cotton, gave me a Jeff Johns Shazam script and said, just in terms of simple format, this is how we like the pages to look. And, I love stuff like that. I'm like, oh, great. So most of what I do now is it's evolved into an adaptation of Jeff's, format that he, was writing that Shazam book in. But, you pick up so many things working with amazing people like Rafa Sandoval and Eduardo Pansica, who just have taught me so much about, the nature of visual storytelling in comics. So it was an uphill sort of challenge for me that I was really excited to take on. And I hope people agree, but I think everything I've been doing has been getting better as we go. And I'm really excited for March when Teen Titans Academy debuts, because I think I've really sort of found a groove in terms of this type of storytelling. It was tough. Future State was tough because we were looking at, you've got a 2-issue story for Teen Titans and a 2-issue story for Shazam, but it's big. There are lots of ideas and lots of aftermath and consequences and questions. It's hard to get all that in a couple of issues and make it satisfying. Luckily for me, Mike Cotton and the rest of the editorial staff, were excited about the idea that Future State, Teen Titans, and Shazam connect, and in big ways. And more than that, that they connect to Teen Titans Academy and current continuity in a big way. So in a lot of ways, what we're seeing is the end of a story at first, which is a strange way to do it, but we're seeing the ending, and now we're going to go back and explore how we got to that ending. Not to say that you've seen everything about how that story ends. That's one of the challenges, is kind of trying to keep it fresh now that you've seen so much of the ending. But that's what we're doing. It's exciting. It's comic books, man. It's bigger than life, and huge Shakespearean stakes, playing out on these pages. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really loved both of those books. Shazam, I hadn't been reading for a while, so I will say, like, I was surprised that because like I didn't know your name was on it at first. Like, I'm reading every single Future State book for the podcast, and then I realized, I was like, oh, he wrote Teen Titans, and I saw the connectivity, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I want to talk about Shazam first. You said it's your first issue. It didn't really seem like a first issue for somebody writing it. Like, if you would have told me that was your first comic book you wrote, I don't think I wouldn't have picked that out, because I think you did a great job. It was awesome. You got the voices of the characters down, but your Billy / Shazam is a very different take than any I've seen before. You take it to a little bit of a dark place, and I also have seen in some of your interviews where Kingdom Come is like very influential to you. And you can kind of see that also. And like, once I've read that, I'm like, oh, I totally see that in his Shazam. So I was wondering if that, like, how influential was that story in terms of the Shazam you were crafting? Because it is, I want to say it's the same, but almost maybe homaging that version.
That's exactly the way I look at it. I mean, I have to tell you, I did not go in with my pitch wasn't, I want to, pay homage to Kingdom Come. It was just an organic thing that happened because I'm such a fan of Kingdom Come, or, and not just, Mark Waid's book, but also, things like Dark Knight Returns and, the big cataclysmic sort of stories that take you to a really dark place sometimes. I think that those stories are so important. I know, especially with Shazam, it can be a tough sell for people. A lot of fans think, look, Billy is pure and innocent, and Shazam should be good, and we don't want to see any darkness there. But for me, I just think it's, first of all, storytelling. This is something a college professor taught me that I'll never forget. He said, drama is not about the day nothing happened. Mm. And that's foremost in my mind. If everything was peachy keen and Shazam was happy and good all the time, there's no real conflict there. There's no real drama. What I'm interested in is the struggle. Where does it break down and how can it break down? That's where I came into it. Now, to speak to Kingdom Come and those other stories, it's more that those things sort of informed who I am as a writer and a fan. And they were naturally going to organically inform everything that I'm doing. I'll say this also, like, I got the job at DC because they asked me to write an outline, just a pitch for anything. And I don't know what it was, but I think I like the idea of taking the best among us in terms of these characters in this universe. To me, there are fewer better than Billy Batson, Shazam, and maybe Dick Grayson as just like the best people in this universe. And I like to sort of bend them to the point where they might even break and see what happens. Now, so I wrote an outline for a Shazam story that was surprisingly even darker than the one that I ended up doing. It was really dark, and it grew out of a lot of personal experience in my life. And but happily, it got everybody's attention in a way that they thought, okay, well, this guy can probably handle something. And then there was when I first was brought in, I wasn't going to do Shazam. I was doing there were a couple of other things I was going to work on. And then those things fell away. And I thought, well, that was my shot. I'm not going to do comics. But then Mike Cotton, who I had met one time, called me and said, hey, what do you think about Shazam? And what do you think about Teen Titans? So yeah, Kingdom Come, you can see there are obvious connections, but I don't think that it's, I didn't go into it thinking that, but I can see how that informed where I was coming from. I think what Mark Waid did, probably came from the same place I was coming from, which is, let's look at the best among us and bend them and see how far we can go and maybe even break them. And what does that do?
I don't want to spoil it just in case somebody hasn't picked up the book, but just the events that take place for Billy and Shazam, like that book, like I said, it really surprised me. I really, really enjoyed it. Bringing that internal conflict between the two of them and seeing the struggle that we really see Shazam in that issue because of the events because you show us the past and then then we jump. I think there's like a time jump, right? Like we see Shazam all kind of messed up, right? And then we learn what happens towards the end of the first issue.
I mean, people who read Future State Teen Titans know that there's a lot of sort of leaping between a couple of different time periods, and it can get a little confusing, I think. That's my fault. But Shazam, it's a little bit more focused in that regard. I mean, we're looking at two distinct periods. We're looking at what's happening now in the future with Shazam, and we're looking at what happened that led up to that years ago. That's all in the first issue, so I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything. And it directly connects to Future State Teen Titans. and Billy's arc in that story. But you know, it was important to get to see what the decision point was that led to where we are in what this, you know, in this the state of Billy and Shazam's future. I mean, this is in the first issue too, so I just don't feel like I'm spoiling anything. And a lot of people are talking about it, which is to say, you know, I came in, my pitch on this was, what is the power of Shazam without Billy? How much of that power is tempered by the goodness and the innocence of young Billy Batson? And therefore, a logical conclusion to that in terms of the creation of the story is, what happens when we take Billy out of the equation and we keep Shazam? And so, you know, you're going to learn more about how and why that happened and what the results and consequences of that are in the second issue. But that was what fascinated me, and it got, you know, everybody at DC was on board with exploring that. I will say this though, originally my pitch was, it wasn't originally going to be for Future State. Originally the pitch was, I want to split Billy Batson from Shazam and have that take place over the run of those two books, where the Shazam title follows, you know, the embodiment of the power of Shazam, and Billy Batson goes to Teen Titans Academy and learns how to be a hero without powers. And that was a bridge too far. They were like, great, but
I want to see that.
Me too, right? You know, but I think they felt like it was too, to spread that out over the course of a year or more. I think they felt would have, you know, done more damage to the brand than it would have done good. And you know, those are decisions that are made way above my pay grade, and I get it. But to get to explore it a little bit in Future State is terrific. You know?
That's a fantastic idea. I mean, I don't
listen. Those guys. Let me say this though: the editorial staff and the people at DC, like, they have decisions. The decisions they make, I see people get upset all the time about decisions that are made at editorial, and it's like, they're working. It's sort of like when you get mad at the government, you know, for the decisions they're making if they don't line everything up perfectly and in the way that you want it to line up. I think they're handling so many different things at the same time, and they're really doing, you know, the best job they can to sort of make sense out of things and satisfy a bunch of different, you know, things that need satisfying. You know, if it was all about just great storytelling, you know, but, well, it is about great storytelling, but there are more considerations when you're running, you know, a comic book business. they have, it's just like an animation. It's, you know, we're making movies. I mean, it's a business, and we have to figure out the right way to get people, you know, to the material. And you know, there's a lot of different, I guess what I'm saying is, I just wouldn't go so hard on everybody. Everybody's doing the best they can, and we're all trying to tell great stories, you know, all the time.
I mean, I'll be honest, like, I'm very hard on, and it's only because I love comic books. Like, I don't do it because, like, I'm like, oh, they're doing something stupid, or why don't they do this? But I do feel that, even, yes, there's movies, right, based on these characters, but I think Marvel, they do it in a way that, I mean, Thor was a woman when Thor was a man in the movies, right? Like, Jane Foster for quite a while, and that didn't affect how people perceive the movies, you know what I mean? So, like, I've never seen Billy separated from Shazam. That story needs to exist, in my opinion, and I think that's the kind of ideas that me as a comic book fan, I want to see some fresh ideas. That's an awesome idea, and I want to.
Well, here's the good news. I got plenty more ideas.
All right, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you do.
There's that, but also remember, this is the thing I tell everybody is, you know, you and I agree, and there are other people who agree with us, but for you and for me, like, for every one of us, there are 5 other people who say absolutely not. That's not what I want to see. You know, from Shazam or from DC, and comics should be for everybody. So this is a great way with Future State to get to explore things that maybe we couldn't do over the course of a year or so in the comics.
Okay.
But we get to, you know, to work with. Now, having said that, you know, all of it connects to Teen Titans Academy.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's don't worry. I've managed to bring in some ideas. I tell you, one of the best things about Teen Titans Academy for me was, when I came in and I said, well, if this is an academy, I'm going to need some new blood. Like, I need some new students. What do you think about these characters? And, DC was just like, yeah, great. I thought, wait, really? You're just, I can just create these new characters? I thought there would be a much more difficult process. And they said, look, you got to do, they're very supportive, of the creators. And, they say, look, you got to do what you got to do to tell your story. If these are the characters, the pieces that you need to fill up that chessboard, do it.
Awesome,
it's one of the coolest things ever is, all of a sudden I get these characters that have lived, versions of them have lived in my brain for a while. And now they get to enter the DC universe.
Yeah, dude, I'm very excited. I want to talk a little bit about the Future State Teen Titans, and then I want to talk more Teen Titans Academy. I liked seeing this because, like, Dick Grayson's one of my favorite DC characters. So seeing the take that you had on him and the kind of turn that happens at the end, you introduced the Red X. I love the Teen Titans cartoon. That is up there with Batman the Animated Series in terms of, like, a DC animated series, like Burnett, Dini, and Timverse, and Teen Titans cartoon. But what I like with you introducing Red X, and what I was kind of wondering, and you answered it right away, which I loved, is that Dick Grayson did at one time have that identity. Okay, so first of all, I want to know, what was your decision? Was it because you were a fan of the cartoon that you wanted to bring him in? Are we going to see are we going to touch more on Dick Grayson and why he had that identity? I know obviously you're going to show who the new Red X is eventually. Probably not, obviously not Future State 2, because I'm sure you'll probably keep the history going. But I just want to hear more about it, because, like, I was really stoked to hear about it.
Yeah, so huge fan of Glenn Murakami's Teen Titans show, and I guess I didn't want. Part of me just doesn't want Glenn to call me and be mad, like that I erase anything out of the canon. No, for me, the opportunity to bring in Red X. I mean, Red X has a history and a legacy. I'm not just going to throw that away. It's a great one, and we had the opportunity to do it in a way where we could retain the continuity and the legacy. It was just. It was there was no way I wasn't going to do it. There was just no way I wasn't going to set it up in the way that where Dick Grayson had been Red X. He had started the machine. That there was another Red X that nobody knows the identity of. I mean, the mystery around the identity of Red X was part of the first episode when Dick was Red X in the show. But we answered it pretty fast, and we the audience were in on it very quickly. The Titans figured it out later. But then the brilliant thing they did with that show was they brought Red X back and put that mystery box around him again and said, "Oh, well, who is it this time?" And we're not going to tell you. That was all integral to Red X for me. I think that hashtag Who is Red X is part of the fun. And there wasn't a way that I was going to start this story without honoring that legacy. There was no way.
Okay.
Having said that, there are opportunities. I'm trying to be careful here.
Okay.
There are opportunities that I'm being given, that may allow us to explore more of the history of Red X in the comics, but also keep in mind that the Titans Academy story that grows out of Future State and Shazam is a new story. There's Red X presents new questions and new obstacles for everyone. And so that's the core focus of where I am in this series. And but along the way, we're getting a chance to fill in. I mean, I do it right away in the first issue in Titans Academy. We'll start right away with a There's a scene in Future State Teen Titans 1 that is a flashback to the birthday party for Dick Grayson, and it, you know, it's tied into Red X, and you know, if you want to look it up, you can check me on this, but you know, Dick Grayson's birthday is in March, so Teen Titans Academy #1 is on sale in March. So we're connected to Future State. We're starting, you know, right away, and it's starting with the Red X, you know, mystery right out the gate.
Yes, dude. I love it, and that's the thing that I was worried about too. You know, I talked about how I was skeptical about Future State. You know, a lot of people are like, "Is this going to matter? Is this? Are we just reading 2-issue, 3-issue, 4-issue series that are just going to be this story, and then we'll probably never see it again?" But there are creators like yourself that are going on to write ongoings after Future State, and like that was my first clue from week 1, and then week 2, like, okay, if they're writing a Future State book, the likelihood of some of these threads being touched on in their ongoings are more likely, right? Some of the creators aren't writing stuff, but your Teen Titans Academy, I'm very stoked on. I like that you're doing like a school type of aspect of it, because I think that the thing that I've always loved about the Teen Titans franchise is like the family aspect and then like the legacy aspect, right? And now you're doing it. I was wondering what the decision was to make it a school, not necessarily just like a team with like mentorship like Jeff Johns did. You're making it an actual academy. And
well, yeah, this is where I have to tell on myself a little bit, which is, you know, that was not my idea. DC came to me and said, we want to do Teen Titans Academy. What do you think about that? And I said, well, here's what I would do, you know, and that was how it started. They knew that they wanted to introduce this mentorship element into the franchise, okay. And it does shake up, you know, sort of the way we look at Teen Titans, but I think in a way that really is organic and makes a lot of sense. And the way it makes sense is with the reintroduction of the OG, you know, Wolfman Perez New Teen Titans as the mentors, as the faculty at Teen Titans Academy. These are the heroes who did this, who went through this, who learned a lot of lessons or didn't, and are doomed to repeat some of their mistakes. But it made a lot of sense for then to bring in some new blood, and even the Titans that we've seen in recent years, you know, as students at the Academy. You know, there is you know, the way that story, you know, the way you know, all stories, you know, everything, not just stories, but everything sort of begins with an ending, you know, and the reason why the Titans come back, you know, is to try to set things right. Things have been going wrong for the Titans, so the old team comes back in to try to figure out a way to set these kids up for success as they grow into the DC universe. I mean, I love the possibility that these new characters or some of the other characters, that they'll all sort of go off and into the world, and maybe other creators will pick them up and add them into their stories, and they can become part of the lexicon of the DC universe. But just from a vanity standpoint, that's exciting, but also just in terms of being a fan, like I love the idea that we just get to see, we're getting to see a bunch of origin stories all playing out simultaneously, and where those origins, you know, end up taking us, we'll see. You know, that's what the great big multiverse is all about.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. So like you said, you're bringing in new characters besides the old school Wolfman Perez Titans team. Will we see any other familiar Teen Titans characters that have been members of the past, or like
yes,
in the Academy? Is it all new heroes or new characters, or are there old characters that are a part of the Academy as well?
There are a lot of familiar faces as well as a lot of new faces. as excited as I am to bring in some new blood, I'm not going to just throw a whole new team at you and expect you to just love them and follow them right away. These kids, the new kids, are just starting out. They're just figuring out what they're doing. And this is a book about mentoring. And so we got to have the mentors. So we're going to get the classic Titans, and we're also going to get familiar faces from, throughout the history of Teen Titans. And, their voices are essential to this story. Now, having said that, I want to be clear that, they're comic books. Like, we don't have all the real estate in the world.
Right.
So sometimes, a character is going to come in and you're going to really be excited about, what kind of great, in-depth story are we going to get with this character? And, it's going to be, it's going to have to be measured because there's a lot of other things going on. I mean, I could write an entire series that's just exploring the mystery of who is Red X. Like, literally, if that's the only thing we're talking about. But there are other things going on in their world that they're going to have to deal with. Particularly Billy Batson. He's got big stuff happening. That is to be able to, there's a lot, it's a balancing act. There's a real balancing act. So I hope people are excited about the idea that they will get to see these familiar characters and have them add their voice to Titans Academy, knowing that, this isn't a rehash of anything. This is a new story. And so we're going to get on the train and take you to a new place,
Yeah, dude. Like I said, I'm very excited. And is there can you give us like one tease about Teen Titans Academy?
One tease about Teen Titans Academy.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you about, there are lots of new characters, and there's a handful of new characters, and three of them I'm particularly excited about. They're a group of 3 orphans from Gotham City who are goth kids and who stylize themselves after the legends that they have heard on the street about the Batman. They're obsessed with the legends they've heard.
Okay.
But much like that old BTAS episode, where the kids were sharing their stories of encountering Batman and seeing him out in the world.
Great episode.
Yeah, and these kids are those kind of kids. They've heard stories that may be exaggerated,
Right.
So their idea of what and who Batman is might be a little exaggerated. They're called the Bat Pack, and they are Bratgirl, Chupacabra, and Megabat. And you've seen Bratgirl and Chupacabra in Future State already. So that's why I feel okay talking about them. Mm-hmm. But we're going to see them, a little bit younger, starting out at the Academy. And so, I'm excited to see sort of where those characters go. I mean, while they are rooted in a sort of Batman, Gotham City sensibility, they're Teen Titans. They're Teen Titans characters. So to sort of mix those worlds is really fun.
Awesome, dude. And besides Teen Titans Academy, you're finishing up Future State coming out in February. What do you have any other projects in the works?
Yes. Okay. And the beauty of my life right now is that I don't think there is anything I can tell you about them right now. I have some more animated stuff on the horizon this year that'll be coming out, but they haven't announced everything yet. I have some other comics that are coming out that they haven't really announced yet, so I don't really feel like I can talk about it yet. Right now I'm that's it's the worst possible time. I can't tell you anything.
It's all good. I mean, I usually get that answer when I ask, but it never hurts to try to see if I can get a couple clues out. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, I'd love to, but I just
it's all good.
Yeah, there's not any. I keep racking my brain because there's a million things going on. I'm like, there's got to be something I can talk about. Oh, you know what I can talk about? Oh, there is one thing I can say, which
Okay.
is that we'll see this year a series that I worked on with Kevin Smith for Netflix called Master of the Universe Revelation. So I got to work with that guy. I had never met Kevin before.
He might be my favorite. I don't even want to call him a celebrity, but he's my favorite famous person on the planet. Like I absolutely adore Kevin Smith and all.
I can tell you that I had never met him before until I walked into his living room to start talking about this show with the other writers and the producers. And I already was a fan, but that I think I left that day exactly where you are. He's
Yeah.
maybe my favorite, not just famous person, but he's my favorite person in this town. He is
Yeah.
genuinely that guy that he presents to the
Yeah.
world. He is a fan. He's enthusiastic. He's encouraging. He's so much fun, and he's really so clever. And maybe the hardest working man I have ever met.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
I mean that without hyperbole. I watched him turn out stuff like great work product in no time. And he's just, he's a seasoned pro. He's not just a personality that we see, on a podcast or out there in the world. He's got the goods, and I learned a lot from him. And so I can't say enough about that guy. He's a wonderful guy and a good friend. And so that show has a lot of love in it. And as a kid who grew up with Masters of the Universe and working with a whole team of people who have a lot of love for that brand and that story. So that we'll see that this year. And
Cool.
I hope people have a good time with that on Netflix.
Yeah, cool. I somehow that missed. I didn't know that Kevin Smith was a part of that. I did see that you were a part of it. I just wasn't sure when it was debuting. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, they haven't announced the date yet, but Kevin, much to his credit, like the announcement was made at PowerCon, which is a convention for He-Man fans, and year before last, and he insisted on bringing the writers, to PowerCon. He drove us all down and he brought us all up on stage when they made the announcement about the show. And that never happens. But he said, look, these are the people that are working on this thing that you guys all love. And I want you to know who they are. And we're all working together to make this thing as great as we can for you. And he's just a generous guy.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be great. And it's very much his show. So.
Like, don't get me wrong, I love comic books, and there's a lot of creators that I would love to talk to, but I think, like, if I get a chance to interview Kevin Smith, I think that I could be satisfied if I never recorded again. You know what I mean? Like, because
keep doing what you guys are doing, because I think you guys are great. And
thank you, dude. It means a lot, man.
People like Kevin take notice, and you never know. Someday maybe you'll have him on.
Yeah, man. I mean, I started this because of my love for comic books. Like myself, I can't draw. I've tried to write, but I think this is like more like where I found my zone. My comfort is like I have the knowledge, and like my wife would always tell me, like, I don't want to hear it because she doesn't read comics. So it's like I ask you one question about a comic book character in a movie that I've watched with you, and then you go off on this tangent about the history and what they did different. And I told her, I'm like, look, it's not my fault that I have all these facts in my head. So like now that I get to get them out, it's
my home is a divided home. I'm a DC person. My husband is a Marvel fanatic. He has read everything.
Oh man, that's
not just MCU. He's a real Marvel comic book. So like whenever a Marvel question comes up, I get to bring it to him. But now he's been reading more since I've been working at DC. He's been reading more DC stuff. I've been coaxing him in that direction finally.
That's hilarious. I mean, Dylan, he's the Marvel guy. I'm the DC guy.
Isn't that funny? That's me.
Yeah. Look, I have DC characters all over my arm. Like my whole left arm.
Hey,
DC.
You see?
So I have Black Canary there.
Yeah.
There's Hal Jordan, Ollie, Green Arrow. You can kind of see that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have Capullo's Joker,
That's amazing.
and then I have Batman and Flash.
Where's Dick Grayson?
I haven't done it yet. I
Oh
have
man.
I got to fill in. The pandemic and like money, it's like I get it.
Where's
But
although I'm a guy who'd say, where's Tim Drake? Like, I'm a big
I
Tim
would
Drake.
as much as I love Dick Grayson, I would put Tim Drake first. That's my Robin. You know what I
Me
mean?
too. That's what I tell everybody. I'm like, Tim Drake he figured it out and came into the fold when I was,
come on.
really into it, and I was so excited about him, and I love that character. I absolutely love him.
Yeah, it's much like Wally West is my Flash. Tim Drake's my Robin. So,
by the way, you talked about not being able to draw. Did you see the thing I put out? I put out this great.
Oh, was it your thumbnail for Shazam? That's probably better than I could draw. So
I can't see it. It's probably not.
No,
you can't see it. But anyway, if you look at my Twitter feed, you'll see it. It's I did. It was my first comic book, and I needed to understand. I needed to teach myself how to translate the visuals for the pages that I saw in my brain to Eduardo in an effective way. So I'd read that a lot of creators, certainly when they're starting out, will do their own sort of private internal layout of the pages. And so I was like, well, this will help me. And it did. It really helped me a lot. But I couldn't believe how much like my stupid layout Eduardo's pencils were when they came back, because he never saw that dumb layout. It was just private for me to be able to write, in the script what I was seeing. And so anyway, but I had to put it out there to show people, look, I'm not an artist. I'm not like, I'm not like Ram, who, can actually draw and write, can do everything. So happily I found a place as a writer.
If I had, I don't have any excuses. I mean, I could probably write if I put more time into it, but it's so hard juggling, especially with doing this, and I edit everything myself. And
did the same artist do all of that ink for you?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Great.
Yeah. I won't let anybody else touch his arm. I told him, like, once he did Batman, I said I want to do a whole DC Comics sleeve, and I don't want anybody else doing it. So like, even though I have to drive far to him, like an hour out of my way, like I just won't go to anybody else. Like that's his piece, And
you're not going to plug him either, because you don't want other people stealing him from.
I mean, I could. I mean, I tag him when I post on Instagram, and I have my art on there. Like, I tag him on there, but he doesn't work in a shop. He does it privately out of his house. So you have to know him in order to come.
So his address is.
Yeah, no, I can't share it. But yeah. Anyways, I want to once again thank you so much for taking time out and chatting with me, dude. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to do this again with you, especially knowing you got some more stuff. So I'm going to be here to help plug it.
Listen, and I hope you'll, listen. I hope you'll like the stuff that I'm bringing out. If you don't, I hope you'll talk about, what could have been better. I mean, really, like, I like smart people who have, opinions and smart takes on stuff. So I can't wait. I'll, one of these days you're going to tear me to shreds, and I'll be there cheering you on.
I probably won't tear you to shreds. I try not to tear anybody to shreds. And if I do really, really dislike a book, I don't ever bash somebody directly, or like, I just overall say the book as a whole. Like, if I don't like something, you know what I mean?
I just like,
I'll be honest.
One of the things you have said recently is that, you're excited about new voices coming in to comics, and, people who you haven't heard from in comics before. And what's sort of implicit in that is sort of the reminder to everybody that, there's a lot of us who are, we just got here, and we're learning, and we're figuring out this medium, and we're doing our best, and we're all fans, So there's a, there's a little bit of a learning curve involved, but I just think, if you stick with us, we'll get you there.
Yeah, dude, no, for sure. I mean, the only, to be honest with you, the books I didn't like are the people that have been around for a while. So, it's not any of the new voices that I didn't like. It was more some stuff that I had higher expectations based on the creatives behind it. And I was kind of let down. I don't want to sit here and bash anybody.
If I can defend creators for just a second and just say.
Go for it, man. Yeah.
I mean, now being in and doing this, there are so many voices and so many things and considerations and stuff that's happening all the time. That and those things are important. They're really good. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. You know, what do they say? It's not show friends, it's show business. You know, sometimes I can see, you know, for creators, for me, there have been moments when it's been really challenging. And you know, when I've said I really believe that this is the thing, and that I've had to be convinced and talked off the ledge a couple of times by people who've been doing this a lot longer, who, you know, work on the other, you know, maybe on the other side of things. And so, you know, I mean, creators, sometimes you know, we don't always bat 1,000, you know.
Yeah, no,
and sometimes it's because there's a lot of other considerations and other things going on, and you know, don't give up on us is all I'm saying.
yeah, hey, I never give up on creators. It's just sometimes, you know, and again, like look, sometimes stories just aren't for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
like we
absolutely.
talked about that earlier. I mean, some people hated Thor becoming a woman. I loved it. It was a natural progression of the story that Jason Aaron was telling. And
Yeah.
that bash it really bothered me. I'm like, well, you're just not paying attention to what the story is, because if you were, then you see that this is the progression of the story.
What I will say this though, like part of what you're saying is like, it's not for everybody. There are a lot of people who insist that a story that involves Shazam, you know, a darker take on Shazam, that they won't go there, and they just block it out. And I want to reach out to those people and I want to say, hey, you know, I know you don't know me, but you got to trust that I agree with you, and that the reason why we show characters, why we bend them and why we break them a little bit is, you know, with a little bit of darkness, is to justify the light, because we want to understand why why it's so important to you know, that they're a bright light in an otherwise maybe dark, you know, multiverse. So you know, it's a story. We don't maybe give you everything right out the gate, but it's a story. You know, stick with us, and when the story plays out, you might be surprised. You might find that we actually agree on everything.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, dude. That's a great spot to end. But before we get out of here, if you could just share with everybody watching or listening where we can find you online, and I will also drop those links down below.
Thanks. Yeah, I am Tim Sheridan is my handle on Twitter. I love Tim Sheridan is my handle on Instagram. So come and follow me, please. I promise I won't always be shilling something that I'm working on, but so maybe there'll be some fun random thoughts in there as well sometimes.
Awesome, dude. And again, thank you so much. And I cannot wait to do this with you again sometime.
Ryan, this is terrific. Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to do it again.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.
Take care.